Derek Carr found a landing spot. There you go.
Crash landing.
Yeah, well, in New Orleans, and I found that to be a curious decision. But it seems like they've been rumored for a long period of time. He visited there during his kind of extended free agency tour, where he was able to get a head start on other people because he had a clause in his contract that required the Raiders to release him before a specific date, before a bunch of money kicked in on his contract, and so he had a month head start for ahead of other free agents, say, like Jimmy Garoppolo, or others, Baker Mayfield, who might be landing in some of these chairs. He had his pick of the litter, and that's why I was a bit surprised about this contract in New Orleans. Now, as always, you have to look at the finer details of a contract to see what it's actually worth. When you get the initial numbers from someone like Ian Rappaport, it's going to be a lot more skewed towards the player because the agent is going to leak that information to the press. The team is not going to refute it because they don't want to piss off the player. But you look at the details and it's not as advertised. So he has like a $28.5 million signing bonus. His base salary next season is just a little over $1 million because the Saints are in such a cap crunch. Then it goes to 30 million the next year, 40 million the year after that, but that's not fully guaranteed. There's some machinations there. And then his 2026 base salary is $50 million non-guaranteed. That's a fake number. He will not be on the Saints in 2026. He will likely be cut before that. It's kind of a similar back end vanity number like he had with the Raiders. And so it's really a 3-year, $100 million deal, but it was advertised as a 4-year, $150 million deal. Take that final 50 off. Carr's a bridge quarterback for whoever they end up drafting, but I am much more pessimistic about the Saints roster than I think some NFL experts are. Not sure what your take is, Bradley.
I guess I was kind of interested that I sort of thought between at least, and this is not me, this isn't just me being, partial to the Jets roster, but I thought the Jets and the Panthers were potentially more
Oh, yeah.
optimizable, if that's a word, landing spots for Carr, only because I feel like one with the Jets, I feel like it's a pretty fully formed offense, despite some offensive line concerns, that he could kind of just be sort of plugged into. And like obviously the narrative for the Jets season from basically since Breece Hall got injured until thereafter was that the biggest problem on what would otherwise be a particularly potent offense was just not having a quarterback. And then the same sort of went for the Panthers, is that even with, I think, towards the end of the season, kind of middling to subpar quarterback play from the likes of either mostly Sam Darnold, or even PJ Walker at some points, not really Baker Mayfield, because that was sort of the nadir, I would say, of their quarterback play.
Right.
We saw some, at least, floor raising, I would say, from guys like DJ Moore and a pretty decent offensive line that is fully returning next year. There are no people leaving in free agency. Seemingly everyone's seemingly coming back for on another deal, or at least they're maintaining their deals. So I thought those would be 1 and 2 before the Saints, only because, as we sort of discussed off air, like they're a bit of an aging team. Chris Olave, who I probably thought would have been the offensive rookie of the year this year, he wasn't even freaking nominated. Would be super enticing to me, but that's sort of the tip and remainder, like the tip of the spear, and sort of like who. That's kind of where it ends for me in terms of who I'd be excited to play with if I'm Derek Carr.
Yeah,
So
Michael Thomas is just collecting a check,
right,
basically.
him and Kamara are not getting any younger. Neither are some of their pieces on the offensive line, like Eric McCoy and Ryan Ramczyk. Like,
And their defense is as old as hell.
absolutely,
Like, I
Cam
mean,
Jordan is in his mid-30s. Marcus Davenport's again also, I think, either 30 or pushing 30. So
and even their other pieces on defense, not to cut you off, Bradley. But I don't have like a ton of. I mean, they signed Tyrann Mathieu in the offseason, and he's really at the end of his rope there. Marshawn Lattimore has the capacity to play really high.
Oh yeah,
has high level cornerback play in him, but he often is quite boom or bust.
yes, and I think so. I just feel like in terms of like full on roster construction combined with like financial flexibility concerns, I was sort of surprised that this is where he ended up. However, I feel like we were both talking about this as well, and some people in the chat are mentioning it too, that it might have also been kind of a level of competition concerns as well. That perhaps Carr would have the best chance to win a division or win the division on this Saints team as opposed to going into the AFC East. But I still think he probably would have had that chance with the Panthers as well. And I think that the Panthers are younger and better, and I'm more inspired by their coaching staff, newly minted under Frank Reich, than I am the Saints. So I'm curious to see what other people think about necessarily the incentives and the motives driving this move, and I'm curious, honestly, what this will look like for on offense for the Saints team and what they're able to do, if anything, given their financial constraints, to buttress this larger move.
Yeah, I think that we might also be overestimating what the interest was from Carolina's end,
Yes,
from the
definitely.
Jets'
Certainly.
end.
It's definitely possible.
The Jets wanted to wait until Rodgers made his decision.
Yeah.
Rodgers is screwing them, and he's not going to go to the Jets.
Yeah,
like,
that's I still, no matter how much ammo might be put towards it, like, I will believe it when I see Aaron Rodgers touchdown in Florham Park, New Jersey.
Yeah,
if you don't give me that visual, I don't believe it. I don't think it's happening.
I mean, look, it might still happen. I get it. But I think Frank Reich is sick of these aging, declining,
yes, that's a great point.
Veteran quarterbacks that he's had to deal with in Indianapolis for the past few years.
It's just been a carousel
forced
of bets
upon him by ownership. That might have been part of the deal when when Tepper hired him. Like, you can draft your guy and develop your guy, and there's a few really impressive quarterbacks in this draft, which
like,
we'll
let me build
into.
it, basically. Let me build something as opposed to have something brought into an infrastructure like Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Phillip Rivers.
And the Jets, it's just, I mean, I can imagine Woody Johnson is saying, wait until Rodgers makes his decision after his darkness retreat.
Absolutely. And the flash is so much more important than that, I think, in terms of they want to wait for the fireworks, even if they don't come.
They're not going to come. I mean, Rodgers, I'm like 90% sure at this point is going to play one more year in Green Bay and
I
then
think
retire.
So. I'm still, my money is still on him returning to the Packers. I kind of feel like we've done this dance a few times the last few off seasons where it seems like the consternation from his camp reaches some sort of boiling point, or we hear more and more about his frustrations, but ultimately he is led back or cowed in some way to return to the team. I would say, honestly, barring him not signing a short-term deal with the Packers, I would almost bet on him retiring before playing for the Jets.
I don't think he's going to retire because I don't think he wants to be in the same Hall of Fame class as Brady.
Yes, right. Not have to share that billing.
He likes attention. That's the thing about this.
Oh.
I mean, and he wasn't always this thirsty about it, I feel like, but in recent years he's been just loving the stirring the pot and getting the spotlight on him, and then pretending he doesn't want it and saying, well, you don't have to listen. Okay, well, dude, you're one of the top players in history in this sport, and you choose to go on multiple podcasts a week, it seems, and just say how you feel without a filter. So people are going to talk about it.
I don't think a residency on the Pat McAfee show leads to more humility.
Yeah, I would not say that.
I think your desire to shoot off takes from the hip probably increases drastically after like 10 to 20 appearances on the Pat McAfee show.
Yeah, and it's just like it's so silly. He's asking us to be totally ignorant about the way media works. Like, this is not your personal therapy session when you go on Pat McAfee. People are going to talk about it because it's media.
Right.
So, but putting that aside, I just feel like he likes this kind of pageantry. He likes the courting. He wants to feel like he's a recruit coming, more highly touted than he was, right, when he was at Cal or whatever.
And he likes the mystery too. He likes kind of being like, oh, like I'll leave. When he was at the golf tournament, being like, it's not going to be San Francisco. It's like that morsel of information probably doesn't matter.
Right.
But he I think appreciates it and is smart enough to know, oh, me saying that will trigger a news cycle.
Of course. He's no dummy. That's the thing about Rodgers.
That's important as well.
Rodgers is actually one of the smartest players in the NFL, but he's so rich and so closed off from reality at this point, that he's begun to believe any bullshit that is fed to him, including like wellness nonsense, anti-vax nonsense, conspiracy
Yeah,
nonsense.
I see.
Kyrie's like that
I was
too.
just gonna say sometimes I find certain parallels between Kyrie and Rodgers pretty compelling.
Oh yeah, they're
Just be
very similar guys, and they're
like
quite
not stupid.
mercurial.
Yeah, mercurial, not stupid by any stretch, but also I think so much in hock to their own stuff that it doesn't become any sort of like their project when speaking to the media isn't sort of to like actually give their opinion. It's to sort of be like, yeah, it makes sense that you don't get it.
Yeah, right.
Like you're like yeah, it totally does make sense that you don't get it. Like you're not where I am, so
Right.
you
And
wouldn't get
Kyrie
it.
would be like, it's because you're a Jew.
Yeah, like well, when did I say that?
Yeah.
I
I,
didn't say that.
I didn't say that. No. Did you hear me say that?
Yeah,
I meant Jew-ish,
yeah, right.
as in the
Kyrie
George
Santos.
Santos Jew-ish kind of thing. But whatever. I mean, like this does not move the needle for me at all. I mean,
No, I agree.
the Saints just were idiots in trading that first round pick for an extra player, thinking they could extend their window with Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton in New Orleans. I mean, I don't understand it.
Yeah, it never really made the
And I
team
thought they
construction
might,
didn't make sense.
yeah, I thought they might tank for Caleb Williams, who's the next superstar in the NFL, maybe. But it seems like they're okay to be middling. And I
Right.
worry that without Sean Payton's influence, this Saints team is going to go back to what it had been historically for so many years, one of the worst run franchises in the entire NFL.
Yeah, it is. It will be interesting in terms of like what the offensive staff under Dennis Allen like does with this group of players on offense, but also just like what the focus or emphasis will this team have? Because it's not as if it's a fundamentally different thing if it's Sean Payton teaming up with
Hmm.
Derek Carr in New Orleans. Like to kind of it's a different thing knowing that this is very clearly not Dennis Allen's forte. So like because he's a defensive minded head coach and he's a defensive coordinator by trade, that who not only who is going to be kind of influencing the offense, but like what are they going to do? Because I don't think this is a complete side just because they have Derek Carr now.
No,
I,
I think this is a move from a team that wants to have their ticket prices not completely fall off a cliff,
right.
and isn't serious about rebuilding. I think it's a half measure. This is not the way good franchises operate. Not saying that the Saints haven't been very good for as a franchise for the past 20 years, but in my opinion, it might have been a little bit more Sean Payton being the sheriff as opposed to the team overall over there in New Orleans being strong. I don't like the move for the Saints, but I haven't really liked their moves since Peyton's left. And even before that, I thought the Michael Thomas extension was not going to end well, and it hasn't. So, sorry, Saints fans, but I don't really have a ton positive to say about this, except for the fact that it's a team friendly contract. He is going to you can get out of it in 3 years, and even before that if you really want to. So it's not big money for a guy like Carr.
Right. And it's just I guess it's really just I have the least amount of excitement with this pairing, I would say. I mean, I love Olave. I think Olave is great, but he's one person on this team. And he's a second year player, so he's young, which is great. I mean, in the sense of like um he'll have a pretty reliable option quarterback, and he was even able to get over 1,000 yards with Andy Dalton and
Right.
Jameis Winston at the helm. So that's exciting. I think to a degree, just I think it'll help him. Like his progression will be fun to watch it basically, but whoever's behind center. But that's not enough necessarily for me to think that this is like a win necessarily for the Saints, because I just I can't see the vision just yet as to what exactly this will foretell for them when they actually get on the field. I feel like I could have seen it so much more with the Jets and the Panthers, but like you said, perhaps that was the scuttlebutt to kind of keep the value higher, despite maybe the Saints being the most locked into him from
From
the
the
very, very
get-go,
beginning.
yeah. It's funny that Andy Dalton's on that team too. Kind of similar careers to
Oh
them.
yeah, yeah. I think that's pretty dead on.